Thanks for watching. Today we are focusing on virtualization, where recent industry changes have left many organizations challenged. Today we have Eileen, the General Manager of WM Promise. Eileen, can you give us some insight about what's changed?
Hi, Emma. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share my screen and just show you a little bit. I've got some slides, they're not very long, but just show you a little bit about what's happening in the whole virtualization landscape at the moment. Most people probably know around November 23, Broadcom acquired VMware. And since then, everyone's been waiting to see what changes are going to occur. And as expected, there's been some changes to the licensing model and some changes also to the portfolio of offerings they have. The big change is there's been a licensing shift from perpetual to subscription-based framework. The other thing is there's been some end of availability for some of their products. What we're seeing now is primarily the primary offerings now are pretty much VMware Cloud Foundation and VMware vSphere Foundation. So they're bundling existing products into different packagings. The other thing, and Emma, this is one for us because we've got a very strong foothold in the higher education sector, is that there's removal of the academic licensing. And then for some people who they've built out an infrastructure that's focused on high performance from individual units, the new licensing is based on cores and not on CPUs. So yeah, there's been loads of changes. And I mean, the most recent thing is that people who are using VMware, they'll have transitioned from Broadcom's support portal from VMware's support portal to Broadcom's. And like, there's a tiny change there. They'll no longer have access to the licenses for expired support contracts. And I know some of our clients, Emma, what they were doing was they were essentially using the portal as a way to sort of do the reporting and so on all their licensing, including the ones for contracts that had expired.
Yeah, right. So what does this mean for the VMware clients?
Yeah, so I suppose, well, it depends on who you are and where you're sitting and how much money you've spent on stuff and how big your estate is. But essentially, for a lot of people, what it really means is, or what their primary concern revolves around, is increased long-term costs. Because for many of our clients, we know from the conversations we're having, it's going to lead to significantly higher expenses for them over time. And that's a concern. For many of them, it's the licensing model change is the bit that's going to be the big concern. Obviously, for some, it's also the fact that there's product bundling in different ways. They are now left with extra efforts that their procurement people and their infrastructure people have to make to work out what's the mapping between what they have now and what they might become available to them. You've also got the fact that people sort of are then obliged, generally, if there's a change in pricing, to report upwards. If you're head of infrastructure, you're obliged to report upwards and say, well, what else could we do, and so on. So yeah, there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of concern out there.
Okay, so what can they do about this? Are there any alternatives out there?
Yeah, there are alternatives. Yeah, there certainly are. In terms of other technologies that are out there, I mean, it's stuff that we're very familiar with, Emma. We've a wonderful relationship with Red Hat, but we are vendor agnostic, and we do get to see what else is out in the market and work alongside of it. So, one of the offerings is Proxmox, which is an open source platform. There's, Citrix have an offering, Nutanix are certainly in this sort of, high CL space. There's Microsoft's Hyper-V. So there's plenty out there. I mean, also Red Hat OpenShift, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then, of course, there's also the option, like there's cloud providers like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and so on, who offer infrastructure as a service. Essentially that means you're sort of renting your virtual machine instead of managing your own infrastructure. So that's a genuine option for people too.
That's great. It seems like there's still options, right? But what else do you hear from the market?
Yeah, so if we're looking at what people are chatting about, because we're looking we've got clients who are looking independently, sort of sussing out what's out there and what their peers and other organizations are doing, and we're chatting to a lot of our clients as well. So I mean, to be honest, it's not really possible. I think it's a bad place to start in trying to compare one virtualization solution to another exactly, trying to find a like for like match. Because, you know, fundamentally, a lot of what's out there, it's got a difference in approach and purpose and so on. So, you know, really what you need to do is to go back and look at, you know, what do I use? What's the business value in the system I have and what am I using it for? I mean, if we look at the couple that I mentioned, as I said, Proxmox is an open source virtualization platform. It's free, and obviously something that's free has got a certain element of desirability about it. But, you know, what goes with that is, you know, are you going to get the same level of features that you may require? If you don't require them, that's fine. You know, as you know, at Promus, we're a bunch of, you know, tech heavy people, guys and girls, people like to build their own systems at home and so on. I know a couple have Proxmox at home in their own little networks. You know, it's Debian, it's easy to do stuff with. You know, you haven't got a feature license wall and so on. It's liked amongst, you know, open source community forums and so on. The price, it's very desirable to have no price tag attached to that. But then there's the issues around, okay, that's fine if it's your own toy network at home. But, you know, if you basically are someone who has to produce reports, KPIs, you have a production environment that's very, you rely on your customer services on that production environment very heavily. Certainly something for any banks where there's any finance or compliance issues around that. That's not really going to be where you're looking. So like another option then is Microsoft's Hyper-V. So yeah, if you're a Windows shop, if it's primarily that's all you're doing, yeah, maybe that's a consideration. If you're mixed shop, if you're kind of hybrid out there, not so sure Hyper-V is what you want, depending on the Linux variants you're using. But in that case, it may be that something else is more desirable for you. You know, again, if you're looking at that, what you do need to take into account, any decision making does need to think about the cost of the Windows Server licenses as well. I mean, something we're getting loads of chat about is, which is why we said, oh, let's have a talk with Red Hat today, is Red Hat OpenShift. And a colleague of ours, Daryl, he used the phrase, God, it's like Red Hat's best kept secret. The fact that OpenShift has got its own virtualization features embedded within it. It's not like you don't think of it as an add-on, you don't think of it as something that you have to tweak. It's something that comes with the tool. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. You know, the other thing is you've got Citrix Zen Server, but again, as I'm hearing from some clients, they're saying, okay, but if we're furiously running away from Broadcom because, you know, we're feeling anxious, you know, they were using, this particular client was using the, you know, oh, it's, you know, it's this shark coming after me for my money. And I'm like, well, you know, the IT landscape is moving to subscription models. But if that's your whole issue, then you think, okay, well, do I really want to move to Citrix? You know, especially the fact that, you know, Zen Server, ZenCPing is the forked version of Zen Server. And, you know, a lot of people who are in that space, that's what they're looking at. Nutanix, you know, we're hearing some chat about Nutanix. Probably because of the fact that some people are looking at that sort of whole hyperconvergent space. Yeah, OpenShift and Nutanix work very well together. Nutanix integrates with various hypervisors and so on. Yeah, so there's you know, that's a very quick tour of some of the other options. That's not all that's out there, but that should give you a feel, Emma, for, you know, what we're hearing certainly in the market.
Great, that's great. You mentioned about some of your clients have considerations. What kind of considerations they are looking at right now?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, they are the things that we should all be thinking about. Obviously, the one big thing that's coming up for everybody is cost. And what I would tell people to really think about is it's not just the long-term costs in terms of your licensing. There's also the short-term costs around migrating. You know, there's also the costs around in-house skill sets and what people are familiar with. You know, you know, you really need to think across your costs across the board. It's not just a matter of the licensing and what commercials might see, procurement might see on the commercials in terms of the license purchase. So the other thing is features. Now, as we both know, we'll often have clients who buy fantastic enterprise applications and so on. enterprise software, and they don't use all the bells and whistles. So that is something that people need to do a little assessment of. Okay, what am I using this tool for now? What is my plan to use the tool for in the future, and so on. And also what really matters to me, like it's high availability, security, you know, in terms of can I do live migrations and so on. Another big consideration, I think, is ease of use and support. So it's fine to talk about things like open source, but if you are a bank and you've got critical systems, relying on the open source community to give you support, fantastic, and we're all very happy members of that, but relying on them to give you support in a critical situation would be high risk, if to say the least. Vendor lock-in, that's another thing you want to see, is what are the tools built on? Are they built on open source technology, or, you know, is there contribution from the community in terms of what's being built out? And a big one, a really big one, I think, is your future plans and your strategy. So, I mean, again, it's something I'm going to mention again, but I mean, virtualization has been around for ages, and to be honest, it's going to stay around, but it is in some ways can be considered slightly legacy. You know, the new way to look at things is very much containerization. Certainly our clients were very, very big in the DevOps space, DevSecOps. And in that space, we're talking to people all the time about automation, containerization, microservices, and so on. And that's what people have on their roadmap. So you do need to think, okay, wherever I'm moving, whatever I'm moving to, is it aligned? Am I just chasing the immediate buck that surrounds the licensing? Or am I also aligning my plans with what my overall IT strategy is? And actually that segues me nicely, Emma. I am going to talk a little bit more about OpenShift, just because we're getting so much of it. We're chatting so much about it at the moment. So the way I like to think about it is, it's like an upgrade to your workshop. So for those clients who already have an element of containerization in their estate, and they also are running, you know, a virtualization platform in their estate, in a way, this is like an upgrade to that estate or that workshop, that you can have your VMs and your containers on the one platform. So you can see the little graphic I have there to the right. It's not about a matter of converting your VMs. It's you literally, you have a virtualization platform there, and you migrate to this new containerized platform, which allows you to manage VMs and containers. The industry standard kernel virtual machine, KVM, is the hypervisor you get. It's all built in with this. And as I said, so it runs pure virtualization. On top of that, Red Hat provide a migration toolkit for this. They also, once you've moved onto OpenShift, so let's say you might part move your estate, so it's part of a long-term plan, you part move your estate. If you do that, you can then over time migrate to containers for whatever you've migrated initially. So Red Hat are providing you the toolkit to transition from your current risky space to something better, which is this one platform, and then to continue on your journey to sort of a more modern way of working, which is containers. The other thing is, I'd say, yeah, when we talk about that idea of, you know, you've got several tools helping you. So it does really allow you to modernize at your own pace. One is, I think, for some of our clients who have huge estates that are committed to VMware at the moment, we're saying to them, okay, don't panic. Some, you know, they're saying, okay, but some of their contracts end within 12 months. They don't necessarily have to move everything. Okay, they can treat this as a sort of a phased approach where they're moving some stuff. They're moving some stuff as VMs. They're moving some stuff to containers, all onto OpenShift, and then other stuff they will move over time. Yeah, and that means there doesn't have to be this big bang. They can do stuff over time. You know, the other thing about OpenShift is it supports Microsoft workloads. It integrates with loads of fabulous DevOps and developer tools that are out there. So it is very much, I think, aligned to a strategy where people are talking about modernizing the way they're working and so on.
Seems like there's something else, right? So how to plan the next move?
Yes, Emma. And this is something we talked about earlier, you and I. We were saying, because we were talking to a client, and obviously they're very anxious. They have quite their contract end date with VMware is sooner than they would like. So they have to make some decisions soon. And their worry is, okay, but even if I choose a new platform to move to or to part move to, you know, how do I approach the migration? So we've done loads of migrations for various things, anything from moving from a data center to moving from a virtualization platform to moving to a new operating system. And you always start with getting a hold on where you currently are. So, what's currently in your IT estate, what currently has priority, where you're going to be left in terms of making a roadmap of what you could move now, what will take a longer time to move, what stakeholders involved, and so on. Then also assessing the landscape around what your alternatives are, what else is out there. Now, for that, Red Hat and other vendors, they usually have fantastically wide partner ecosystems. And people like Promus, WM Promus, that's me and Emma, we're really happy to talk you through the various alternatives. You're not alone. You can reach out to people for some help there. The second thing I would say is phases. Whatever you're going to do it in phases. Don't try and adopt a big bang approach. That, I've done millions of projects. Big bang approaches, you are just setting yourself up for a lot of stress and possibly not very much success. The other sort of obvious one is Promus. We're massive fans of automation. Okay, we're very much that DevOps principle of automate. We very much believe in that. Red Hat also very much believe in that. We use their Ansible tool to do a whole raft of things. When you're doing this migration, it is a fantastic opportunity to sort of embed any automation good practice that you currently have in-house. If not, talking to your partners about how can I ease this migration through automation and also through tools which partly do that for you. So as I mentioned before, Red Hat have two tools. One is to help you move from virtualization, and one is to help you move from your current platform to OpenShift, and then also to move from within that platform from virtualization to containers. The next one's the obvious one. I've written it in italics: fail to plan to fail. So you do need to make up a roadmap of where you're starting at and what the long term is, because this may be sort of a 3-year plan as opposed to something you're planning to do over a number of months. And the last bit, do plan for failure. You always need to include something that allows you to do rollbacks if stuff goes wrong. All the obvious kind of stuff. Normally, when we do migrations of any type, we'll choose a safe spot to do a pilot on. We then generally build out a pipeline of the items in the estate or the data centers or whatever it is, whatever is being moved from a source to target. And on that roadmap, we would say you need to build in iteration, lessons that you're learning along the way. So that's quite a high level view in terms of the migration, Emma, but there's sort of, there are things we've learned as things have gone wrong for us. So I suppose what I should add is when I'm saying, reach out to us. So there's our details. And Emma, everyone should feel really free to reach out to us. We're always happy to talk to people, whether they're not clients of ours or not. We like to talk about tech, and do feel free to reach out to us, and we're really happy to see if we can help you in any way.
Thanks, Eileen. I think it's clear now, and obviously there are options, and the best approach is to have a helping hand from the market. Thanks for watching.